Welcome to The Show Off, the podcast where we make each other sit down, shut up, and watch episodes of our favorite TV shows and then explain, or be forced to listen to, why it's top-tier television. This show is for anyone who has ever wanted to go on endless tangents about their favorite shows, but their friends and family don't want to hear it. We get it. Ditch those losers and come hang out with us instead. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Kampy.
And this is The Show Off.
Hey there, friends. Welcome to this very special episode of the Show Off podcast, where Amanda and I are going to be discussing the Moffat era of Doctor Who. We just got done recording our Doctor Who episodes for the podcast, so Amanda talks about a Moffat episode, I talk about a different Moffat episode. This discussion came off of that, and it ended up being a lot longer than we anticipated, hence why it's its own episode. So stick around. I think we both make excellent points, and enjoy the show.
Awesome. All right. Anything else you want to mention about this episode specifically?
No, just my Moffat rant.
Sweet. All right, you go first. I will counter argue.
All right.
Yeah.
So,
Should we shake hands first? Yeah. Okay.
Very
fair.
Yes,
oh my God,
gentlemanly. Are you okay?
I just crack your hand.
I'm fine. Are you okay?
I'm good.
So, gentleman's agreement. We had our
Yes.
gentleman's handshake.
Yes.
We're gonna be cordial.
Yep. And for the record, like, all opinions are valid.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what's hilarious? I mean, about Doctor Who in particular, everybody has a different goddamn opinion.
Yeah.
Like, there's no consensus for any of this show.
And it's because the show is whatever it means to you.
Yeah.
Right?
But, like, particularly for the show, it's, like, especially wild. Like, you can't trust anyone's opinion. You have to watch it for yourself and decide.
Yeah. Which is, yeah, after 2 episodes of this, don't trust us.
Yeah, go watch it.
And yeah, okay, so I will preface this again, as I did at the beginning of the episode. I do like Moffat as a writer. I do think he is a good writer. He does good dialogue. He does good suspense. He does good plots.
Fuck yeah.
Good ideas. He's good.
Yeah.
My issue is him as a showrunner. All right, and this is where we get into it.
Yeah.
So I have 4 main problems. I am cribbing a little bit from H Bomber Guy. So
okay.
He is a YouTube. He did a 2-hour video on why Sherlock, the TV show, sucks, which was also run by Moffat.
Oh boy. Oh man, the whole thing sucks?
According to H Bomber Guy.
Oh wow, okay.
And he does talk a little bit about some of Moffat's other work, like Doctor Who, and I think it's called Jekyll.
Yeah, I did. I just read about that the other day. I was like, oh, I didn't even know that was a thing.
When I watched this video, I felt so validated because I always had an issue pinning down what I didn't like about the Matt Smith seasons of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And then learning that it was run by Moffat and hearing H Bomber Guy kind of break it down in terms of Sherlock, I was like, oh, I get it now. I finally understand what has been bothering me. And it's nice to hear someone else kind of voice it.
Yeah.
So again, this is my opinion. Right. And it's what doesn't resonate with me personally. As someone who consumes media and what I like to consume in media, it's what I don't like. Right.
Yeah.
So.
And for the record, y'all, I cannot fucking wait to hear this because every time that we sit down and try to watch an 11 era episode, she's just like, I just hate Matt Smith. And I'm like, why? Give me a concrete reason why. And she literally hasn't been able to.
Okay. Matt Smith as an actor, do I have a problem with him? Not really. He doesn't have eyebrows, which is the only thing that bothers me, but
yeah, I know the what's hilarious about that is then in context, regeneration overcompensates with Peter Capaldi, who is like all eyebrows.
That was beautiful.
Yeah.
No, I don't have a problem with Matt Smith. My problem with Matt Smith is Matt Smith as the Doctor, and it's because of how he's written by Moffat as the showrunner.
All right,
and what's done. All right, so issue number 1 is Moffat is very obsessed with the mythos and the mystique and the persona of the character, right? Of the Doctor. Yeah. He has to be this larger than life thing, which in many ways he is.
He is, yeah.
But I do think other episodes and other showrunners like Russell T does a better job of grounding the Doctor in reality and connecting him to him more. With Moffat, the story starts to become about the Doctor rather than the Doctor just stumbling his way into stories, if that makes sense. So in this episode example, right, they literally just show up on a ship and they find themselves in the middle of this plot. They didn't ask for it. They didn't look for it. Like, it just, they stumbled into it. Yeah. And that's what it is. And in future episodes and future seasons, it becomes much more of the plot finds the Doctor. Adventures find him, summon him. And it's about him and what he's doing in his life and his being. It's just all about him rather than fun, quirky adventures that he likes to go on. Okay. Right. And there's, like I mentioned before, like little throwaway comments that allude to other moments that help sort of build the mythos of him without building it up too much. So comments like 19, or I keep saying 19. Comments like 1727, that's a good year, except August, stay indoors. Right. Little throwaway comments like that help allude to a larger picture of this person. Yeah. And help to build up that mythos. I like those. Yeah. I think those are fun, especially when they come from the Doctor. But in later episodes, a lot of those lines start coming from other characters. Is there a problem with that? A few times? No. But it starts to happen a lot, where a lot of characters are constantly just alluding to and referencing how much larger than life this guy is. Do you have an example off the top of your head? I am thinking of, I can't think of her name. She's the woman, the lesbian lizard. Vastra. Yes. Yeah. And she gives like countless speeches about how important the Doctor is. I think particularly in the episode with Clara, that Christmas episode, she talks about how mysterious and powerful. And yeah, I hear you. I think in that one, whatever. It's we don't have to get into it, because River does that sometimes too, where she's like talking about how great he is and how powerful he is, basically. It's almost, and this is strong language, and I know it's strong, but I'm using this to make a point. It's almost like worship. A lot of these characters end up worshiping the Doctor. And yeah, as H. Bomber Guy puts it, in earlier seasons, he is just a guy with his own personality and his own problems who likes to have adventures. Yep. And is only a single piece of the puzzle for the whole episode story. Yeah. Yes, he's the main character, but he is not the center of the universe. Okay. He is just one part. Yeah. And happens to stumble into other people's stories. Yeah. And yeah, like I said, in later seasons, he just becomes the most important person at the center of the universe and in the center of everything that's happening. And I think a good example of how this plays out on a smaller scale is if we look at the companions and how the companions are treated. So why were the different companions picked? For Rose, who's his main companion in this episode, she was picked because she was there, right? There's no special reason to it. There's no grand plan for it. She was there. She helped him out of a spot. Yeah. He invited her to come traveling with her. Yeah. That was it. In Moffat's run, from what I've seen so far, he picks Amy because of the crack in her wall. Well, she is also kind of just there in the beginning. But then she gets more, yeah. And I think the reason he stays involved with her is because of the crack in the wall, right? Like, he has a purpose to be there. Yeah. We do get that a little bit with Rose with Bad Wolf, but it's so obscure. Well, and that comes later. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then Clara is picked in the season that we watched with you as Clara. She's picked because she's the impossible girl. Yeah. Right. And so the way that the companions are treated as either purposeful or coincidental. Yeah. It's that difference where if it's done once, do I mind? No, I think it's fun. But when it's done over and over again, where we have to just take every choice and everything that happens so seriously, it gets a little exhausting for me. Okay. Yeah. And that includes the attitudes that the companions have towards the Doctor. I know Russell's seasons, we get Rose, who falls in love with the Doctor, and Martha, who falls in love with the Doctor. And there's and Donna, who's like, fuck no. We love Donna. Yeah. We stand on this house. And there's definitely an imbalance there, an imbalance of how the companions feel about him, but it doesn't feel as much of worship as someone like Amy, where there's literally an episode about how she worships him. Yep. And again, if it's done, a few times, I'm okay with it, but it starts to just be too much. Okay. And yeah, it becomes all about the Doctor instead of the stories that he's working with, right? Mm-hmm. And again, talking about coincidences and the meaning, I love this episode that the Doctor and Rose and Mickey, they don't know why Madame de Pompadour was picked. Mm-hmm. And they're okay not knowing why. They're like, it was just a weird thing.
Yeah.
No bigger scheme to it. It just was what it was, and we're going to move on. And yes, we as the audience get the closure, but I like that it's just what I call a hiccup of the universe.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't feel like that happens as much in Matt Smith seasons.
Yeah, it does happen. It's definitely less of a thing. Like the one that pops in my brain is Late Night Guy.
James Corden?
Yeah, James Corden's episodes.
That's a good episode.
He's like, well, yeah. The first, very much random guy.
Yep.
And yeah, I'm trying to think. And I mean, yeah, I can't think of a lot of one-offs like that. They do exist, but they're definitely more rare.
I think those are the ones I enjoy more. Yeah. Because like I said, they're the hiccup of the universe episodes where we're taking a break from this like epic tale that's going on where everything is about the Doctor. The next point I have is about depth. So H. Bomber Guy says in his video, Moffat is really good at implying something smart or deep is happening, but he's not really great on actually executing it and following up on it. It kind of falls apart when he tries. Okay. And so to me, how I interpret this and how I apply this to Doctor Who is, again, like the myths surrounding the Doctor. Mm-hmm. It is really fun to hear other people kind of talk about like sort of the mythology and like, oh, wow, he did this cool thing and this crazy thing. In this episode, Rose brings up how the Daleks call him the oncoming storm, right? Yeah, yeah. And like, to me, that's fun. Like to have little tiny bits and pieces of it, as long as it's not overdone. Okay. And I do feel like a lot of Moffat's run, it's very like hitting you on the head with a hammer of how cool he is, how many names he has. He is so amazing. And again, it's fun in bits and pieces where you as the audience are like, wow, who is this person that they have some of this stuff. But again, when you try to execute on some of it, it just, I don't know, it falls short of the expectation because you're building the expectation in the viewer's head. Okay. So when you do move to do it, it comes coming down a little bit. And what I like about in this episode too is Rose is evoking the mythos of the Doctor and the mystique of the Doctor to try and bluff her way out of a situation, right? Yeah. It is done as a last-ditch effort. It ends up being done for comic relief. There's an undermining element to it all where it's still there. It's still being played. It's still planting the seed in your head. But again, it's not hitting you over the head with it. Yeah. It's just a thing, right? Yeah. Yeah. Thoughts?
Yeah, I have thoughts. I want to let you run through the whole thing. I feel like one thing I'm getting so far is I feel like you just have a tone issue.
A little bit, I think so.
I think that's a big part of it.
I sum this all up in one line at the end of this. So.
Okay. All right, keep going.
Yeah, and I think too, like the line of monsters have nightmares about me, in the context of that scene, he is saying that to comfort a little girl. And it's not done as he's like, no, the monsters fear me. It's done to, again, comfort someone who's scared. Yeah. And I think that's fun. I think it's a good way to establish of his charisma and him trying to be on top of things without making it too serious.
Okay. So let me compare that line to in the one where he gets to talk to the TARDIS and the TARDIS is a woman. Yes. And there's, I forget what the people are, but they're like saying, oh, we've like lured so many Time Lords here to their deaths and like we've killed so many and or we've killed like hundreds of Time Lords or whatever, fear us. And he says, fear me, I've killed them all. And it hits you real hard.
It does.
Is that what you don't like?
That one it's context, right?
Okay.
And so that one is one where I'm a little bit like, like, does it work? Does it work as a line in the episode? Yeah. Yeah. But it's exhausting. It's exhausting of like, I get it, man. You're super scary.
I mean, for me, that line particularly hits with just as much, like anger and threatening sort of emotion as self-deprecation. Mm-hmm. It's like very much equal parts of both at that moment. And again, I mean, in that context, like he's just found out this devastating news of like all these Time Lords have been lured to their deaths, blah, blah, whatever. So yeah, like you said, context dependent. Yeah, anyway.
And this is where I bring in Jack Sparrow.
Okay, here we go.
So for me, original Pirates of the Caribbean, fantastic movie, right? It's
Fuck
great.
Yeah. And if you haven't rewatched it recently, by the way,
it's so good.
Go rewatch it because my God.
It's near perfect.
It's near perfect. Yeah. Yeah.
And Jack Sparrow as a character within the movie is not a central part necessarily. He is a main character, but he's not necessarily what the story is revolving around.
Sure.
He's just bumbling around, part of the plot, driving the story forward, sure, but again, it's not all about him.
I mean, if you were to ask a random person who is the main character of Pirates of the Caribbean.
He is the most iconic, yes.
Okay.
But the story isn't solely driven by him. And I think one of the things, too, is you have this great character who fans love, and they're hard to pin down, I would say,
okay.
right? Where you think Jack Sparrow is just this drunk idiot.
Right.
Or maybe he's a mad genius because he did escape that island.
Yeah.
Supposedly by latching two turtles together with the back from his hair.
Right.
So you're trying to figure out who he is. There's this mythos and this mystique about him, right?
Yeah.
And
like, is he self-serving? Is
yes.
he not self-serving? Is he,
he's very
what's his
hard
motivation?
To pin down.
Yeah.
And as the story unfolds, you're thinking sometimes, yeah, he is kind of a genius, and sometimes like, oh, he's
a dumbass.
He's a dumb asshole. Like. It's fun, right? And I think the writing kind of has fun with playing with that, with here's the mythos, here's the mystique, and here it comes crashing down. And here's the mythos, and here's the mystique, and we're going to come crashing down again. And where Pirates starts to lose me is when they start to lose that aspect of Jack, and when the movies shift to be more about him.
Okay.
Right. And yeah, and like with Jack Sparrow, like part of the crashing down thing of like, he's this madman who managed to escape the island. Like, you find out he was just picked up by rum runners. That's how he escaped. There's no magic to it.
Right.
It's just, that's how it happened. But again, I like this idea of we're building up the myth, we're building up the mystique, and there's a totally mundane explanation to it.
Okay, I've thought of my first comeback.
All right.
Do you want it now or later?
I'm gonna wrap up till I get to the Holmes effect.
Okay.
So I'll talk about the Holmes effect, the Sherlock Holmes effect.
Yeah.
Which is, if you haven't read Sherlock Holmes, part of what makes those stories so great to me as a reader is you get very engrossed in this mystery. You're given all the clues that you need, and then Sherlock solves the mystery.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a magician showing you how to do the trick of saying, you had all the tools, here's how to do it, right? And so for you as a viewer, this character who's so smart and so cunning and impossible to understand, and how could he do that? That's insane. When he shows you how to do the trick, you have a moment where you think, maybe I could learn how to do that. There is a relatability to a character like that, where it's both fun to build them up as something larger than life, but then to also find a way to make the audience feel like, maybe I could be like that. And I think early Doctor Who does a really good job of, he is this larger than life character, no doubt. He is really smart. He is very clever. But there are a lot of moments throughout the early seasons where you feel like you could relate to him on some kind of level.
Okay.
Or at the very least, be able to keep up with him like the companions can. And I feel like in Moffat runs, it just starts to kind of spiral of, he's so much larger than life, you just have to hold on for dear life.
Yeah. I don't know if I have ever felt through the entire run, maybe some 9 stuff, but not even really then. I don't think I've ever thought through the entire run that I could keep up with the Doctor, particularly as we were talking about with this whole episode of the space jargon. I'm like, you just know stuff that I don't know.
No, that's fair. It's more, again, I think it's more of just keeping the Doctor grounded in a sense of reality. And I think my next point, and then I'll let you go, is how far ahead of their adversary are they? In this episode, the Doctor is flying by the seat of his pants. He is barely one step ahead of these creatures, and they get ahead of him.
Right.
And he doesn't know how he's going to solve the problem. He doesn't know how this is going to end. He is trying to get ahead of them. And while the ending is a bit of a cop-out where the fireplace still works as a link,
right,
I do like this, that sometimes he just has to get very, 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 very lucky. Yeah. Sometimes it's not just him being a genius. Sometimes he just has to hope for the best to happen. And in later seasons, and I'm thinking particularly about like Big Bang 2, the Doctor is 5 steps ahead of everybody. And it is fun to find out as a viewer of like, how did he do that? And seeing how the timeline unfolds.
Yeah.
But again,
is he 5 steps ahead the whole time though? There's a point where he figures it out. And then he's like, oh, I saw myself do this. I saw myself do this. I have to get the mop. I have to get the fez.
Yeah, but
Like,
the stakes to me never feel, even though the stakes are super high because we're talking about the end of the universe, the stakes for him and whether or not he's capable, it doesn't feel as strong to me.
okay.
Because his mythos is built up so strong and they never do enough to kind of bring him back down. So, okay, I'll let you go.
Okay. All right. My first question is, why do you hate magic?
I don't. I don't.
That was a joke, for the record. I know you don't hate magic. I hear all your points, and like, it's truly a different, I mean, this is like one of those cases where it's just truly just a difference of opinion, a difference
100%.
of what you like and don't like. I am here for the mythology. I am here for the larger than life, make it epic, make it like, yeah, like this crazy, insane, like to me, like it's Doctor Who, it's time and space. Like we're going to different planets, we're traveling through history and the future and all around everywhere. Like if you don't make it big, what are you doing? Like, why would you not make it big? So for me, I mean, I think that's kind of our fundamental difference.
Yeah,
I guess.
And it's not that you can't make it big. And I think Moffat talks about how with his one-off episodes, he liked to write basically something that you could make a full feature-length film about.
Sure.
He wanted to write an episode as an episode of television, a 45-minute episode of television.
Right.
He wanted it to feel like 2 hours.
Right.
And
We're not making TV, we're making mini movies.
Yeah, he does a phenomenal job at that. And like I said, you can still make it big and feel epic.
Yeah.
Without making it lose touch with Earth reality.
Okay. I want to lose touch with Earth reality. That is the point of Doctor Who for me, is like leave Earth behind. Like, please let us not do reality for 45 minutes.
Fair.
The whole conversation around like Moffat's great at writing one-off stories and like less great or bad at doing like overarching season plots is a common opinion. I think he's pretty good at them. I don't think they're perfect. I think like a lot of people, though, will agree that like season 5 in and of itself as like a continuous story is almost as perfect as you can get almost. And yeah, if you don't like the tone of it and the bigness of it, then it's going to fall flat.
On paper, it's good. It's kind of, the execution of it that I just start to lose interest.
Okay, let me just go through my points and I'll try to weave it back into your stuff as I go.
I do have 2 more points.
Oh, you do? Oh,
Yes.
Do you want to go then? Or should I? What do you want to do?
Because, I'll tell you, the next I'm going to talk about character growth and then story arc. So,
Okay, yeah, you might as well go then.
So issue number 3 is how character growth is handled. I think you don't have to have a huge amount of character growth in an episode to feel like the character is still being challenged, right?
Sure.
In this episode, does the Dr. David Tennant's character grow a lot? No. But is he still forced to confront some things that he would rather not confront? I think yes. He, for a very brief moment, thinks he's going to have to take the slow path.
Yeah.
And that's completely new to him. Having to travel through time chronologically.
Right.
Yeah. And
his actual worst nightmare.
yeah. And he still made the choice to sacrifice his happiness that way. And yeah, being forced to confront that. And then I think the other bit of character growth, even though it's small, is Renette seeing his past, seeing his childhood, knowing how lonely he feels.
Yeah.
And that being a unique experience for him, for someone else to see him that way.
Yeah.
Is it a ton of character growth? No, but there's moments and you see the Doctor literally having to confront it. You can see it on his face that he is trying to process through what's happening. And you're probably going to disagree with me here.
Yeah.
In seasons, I keep referencing Matt Smith seasons because that's the only stuff I've seen so far.
Yeah, that's the other thing, y'all.
I know. This
is an incomplete argument.
Get through these seasons though, guys.
I'm working on it, y'all. I'm working on it.
It's, to me, the character growth there, it doesn't work, or it doesn't happen as much. Like, you hear all the time from other characters, you're full of anger, you're full of rage, you've brought all of these enemies upon yourself, and he just glowers, and then the plot moves on. And there's never a real confrontation with really a lot of this stuff. There are, don't get me wrong, there are moments, But on a larger level for the whole show, these seasons that Moffat's running, I don't see it.
Yeah, you wanted that to hit more. That's fair. Yeah, I think this is reminding me now of one of the points I was thinking of earlier when you said like he's this larger than life character, like all this stuff happens. That does become like a major issue in the plot of when we get to Demon's Run with River. And she shows up at the end and she has to tell him, look at all this shit that you made happen because you got too big.
Yeah, but he immediately then, oh, I know who you are now. And ha 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 ha, Amy, ha ha ha.
Yeah.
I'm going to run off now and not explain anything.
I would,
He's not confronting it.
Yeah, I would argue that that's the point.
Yeah. And I guess what I'm trying to say is I like when my characters are humbled.
Okay.
And allow themselves to be humbled, even if it's baby steps.
Yeah, I would say like that's going to continue to be a thing. And that probably doesn't come to fruition until the end of season 9.
God damn.
Like we're playing the long game.
What season am I on right now? What season am I on?
You are on the end of 7.
Oh, god damn.
But you're entering Capaldi, so Matt Smith is going to leave soon.
That's true.
Yeah.
I might like it better.
You might like it better. Yeah, that's what. Well, actually, there's also a moment in season 8 where he gets talked to. So, you know, it starts to happen more, I would say.
I just wish it would happen more.
Yeah. I guess my argument to that is that's the point.
I mean, I'm thinking of another episode right now too, where you have the two Amy's on 2 different timelines.
Yeah, Amy's Choice.
Yeah, and then the episode just ends with him like not telling them that they can't have both ways, and just making the decision for everybody, and they're all mad at him, and he just doesn't deal with it. He just glowers, and they move on.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. This part of the podcast is for Whovians. Sorry if anyone's sticking around who has not watched Who.
We're impressed, for the record. If you're still here and you haven't watched any of this, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for still being here.
All right, and this brings me to my final point.
All right, one more.
Yeah, which is the story arc. And to me, it never feels satisfying.
Okay.
In one-off episodes, we get a good beginning, middle, end. There can sometimes be some ambiguity, which is great. You can leave it open-ended sometimes, but you still have a conclusion, right? You still get your satisfying denouement. And even having an elongated story arc across a season or several seasons is fun. I mean, Supernatural is 5 seasons of a story arc, and then who knows what the hell happens after that. But at the same time, at the end of every season, you still feel like there's some kind of conclusion.
Sure.
Even if there's some stuff that we still have to deal with, right?
Yeah.
Once we enter the Moffat era, it, to me, spirals. When we get to the Moffat era, there's a crack in the universe.
Yep.
Why? Because the Doctor's TARDIS exploded. Why? Because the Silents are after him. Why? Because there's a secret cult bent on destroying him. Why? Because silence must fall when the question is given. Why? And it just keeps going.
Okay.
And then there's this mysterious girl. Why? And there's never a moment where you feel like, okay, we're done. That's the end of that part of the story. Let's take on the next part.
Yeah, and I don't mind that one bit.
And again, if that's your cup of tea, like, great.
Yeah.
But for me, like, it becomes frustrating after a while, where I'm like,
to me,
there's
it's
so
okay.
many secret cults and organizations, and I'm just bored.
To me, it's okay because it's literally telegraphed from the day one.
Right, that he did have this,
like, all the way through. To your point, like, the arc sort of keeps building on itself.
Yeah.
But, you know, what he's trying to do is take you from literally the first time you see Matt Smith on screen to basically the last time you see him on screen. All the way through.
Which, yeah, I mean, again, on paper, love it. In execution, I get bored.
Okay.
Yeah. And just as a sidebar, Moffat has a thing for secret organizations bent on destroying insert
XYZ. Yeah.
Because you get the Silence in Doctor Who, you get Moriarty's and like the whatever bust things, Mary, I don't know, there's a bunch of secret orgs in Sherlock bent on destroying like Sherlock or the world. And then in Jekyll there's supposedly a secret cult in that show too. So Moffat's got a thing.
Sure, why not?
Yeah. And it's one of those things that, to me, the secret cult or the secret organization that's pulling the strings is a very boring, to me personally, it's a very boring story device.
Okay.
Just because I'm like, woo.
Yeah.
Big bad guy.
Yeah.
Secret org. I like when you're forced and you're constrained to more real life, realistic things, because I think you have to get more creative. And that way you can still build up this mythos and, ooh, what's the secret thing happening? And then, oh, it's just this.
Yeah.
Right? You can imagine yourself in that kind of a situation then. It's a little more fun for me, personally. And I think in summary, this is my one-line sentence.
Oh, I'm ready.
In summary, I think my issue is that Moffat takes the Doctor too seriously.
Interesting. Wait till you get to Chibnall.
Oh, dear.
Okay, continue.
No, that
was it? That was it?
Yep. I think
Oh.
overall my issue is it's taken way too seriously. And I like it when it's more fun and off the walls. And yeah, the stakes are still high, but
Yeah.
we know what we are. We know
Yeah.
who we are. We know the budget that we have.
Yeah. Which
Yeah.
they did get more budget. I mean, they've
Yeah.
progressively
think
gotten more budget.
That's like, don't give Moffat budget. Leave him constrained because he does really well in constraints.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I think for me, to that point specifically, I think it's the perfect combination of serious and not serious, because I mean 11 is I think 11 is a really good example of this. Is he is extremely unserious.
Yeah.
Probably most of the time, like 70% of the time. But then you have the 30 or maybe even smaller, maybe like 10% of the time when he can just turn on the
and
serious face.
That can be very impactful.
And I'm into that. Anything else you want to wrap up with? All right, cool.
Yes.
It's my turn.
Go for it.
Here we go. And yeah, I will try to like keep things in mind that you said as I go and see if I can like bring loops back around. Okay. My Moffat era defense. Here's my speech now. But yeah, I'm a Moffat era apologist. I make no excuses. I will die on this hill. I love it. I think it's great. It's my favorite, era of Doctor Who. Yeah, 11 and 12 very shortly after are my favorite Doctors. Yeah, and I think one of the reasons this gets so piled onto is I truly think he and his writing and this era really just like suffered from the hate echo chamber of the internet, I think, a lot. And, people just piling on to pile on. I think I've seen a lot of, posts like Reddit, Tumblr, whatever, where people will be like, oh, I was rewatching some of this era of Doctor Who, and actually it's not that bad. Like, why do people hate it so much? I'm like, yeah, because there was this fucking like weird energy around it the whole time.
Which I am going to put out the disclaimer. I was not on Tumblr.
Yeah,
or
yeah.
like any social medias when I was first watching this. So
Yeah.
this is my own opinion in a bubble.
Yeah. And I was a little bit at the time, but not very much. Only in the last couple years have I been more down that rabbit hole since I've been rewatching stuff. But anyway, like there was definitely a time where it was just like hate to hate.
Yeah. So it probably did snowball.
It snowballed a lot.
Yeah.
And I think to the point where people were making personal attacks on him and
God,
like
no.
and as far as I know, he's fine. Like he's a little bit blunt, a little bit like he's not always
human.
Yeah.
Who has flaws.
Exactly. And people just like really went for him for a long time and still do.
People just take it personal when it's their show that they love and they think it's being written for them.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. It's going to be different. So there's all that. And I think like, yeah, even if you see problems with it, if you go back and watch it or like you get some distance from it and rewatch it, you'd be like, yeah, it's not that bad actually. Actually, there's some good stuff to this. And I think there's a thing people miss a lot is I think there are actually a lot of similarities between RTD era and Moffat era in like some of the dialogue, like we talked about, like Bad Wolf, like he kind of tried to do this like supernatural level companion thing that then Moffat kind of took to the next level. It was a lot of Moffat taking stuff that he started to do and just doing more of it,
which if I'm honest,
which
those
is what
are
you
the
didn't
elements
want.
of RTD that I don't like.
There you go. So again, truly, it's a difference of just opinion and preference.
Absolutely.
So obviously it's not perfect. There are problems. There are things that could have done better. I think like one of my main gripes of that era is the wedding of River Song and like how that kind of turned out. It was like not super satisfying at all. But I think Yeah, like you said, like people that think it's written for them and people that expect like every single fucking episode of television they watch to be perfection and no less. Like, can you please calm down? Like,
again, people taking themselves too seriously.
Yeah, people taking all of it way too seriously.
Calm down.
Yeah, like
this is all for fun.
Exactly. It's all for fun. Perfection is untenable.
It's overrated.
It's overrated. Like, the man did the best he could, and I think he did a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
Did a lot of good stuff. And
like
for
I said,
me,
credit where credit's due. He is a good writer.
Yeah, and for me, the good stuff far outweighs the bad stuff, or the less than perfect stuff, if you will. And I think another thing that people don't take into credit, and this is where I'm interested to see your opinion coming up, is that I think he did take what fair criticism was thrown his way and actively tried to make improvements in the later seasons. And that's not nothing, I think. Again, this is the stuff you haven't seen, so I'm interested.
This is also where this is one of those things where I'm like, I am conflicted about writers having so much interaction with fans. Sometimes I think it is good. Sometimes I think the fans push back in very valid ways and it allows a show to grow and improve. So I'll use Bob's Burgers as an example. Marshmallow and transgender people originally in the first season, not the best representation. It wasn't the worst you've ever seen on TV, but it wasn't the best. It could have been done better. And the writers took that critique and they did a lot better in later seasons with trans representation.
Yeah.
Another example of this is Moffat.
Okay.
In Sherlock. Sherlock has a lot of queer baiting in it.
Yeah.
And the episode where they're trying to...
It's all queer baiting.
Yes. The episode where they're trying to figure out how Sherlock survived, they're doing a lot of different... They shoot different imaginary scenarios of what could have gone down on the roof between Sherlock and Moriarty. And like, there's a scene where they almost kiss because one of the theories is that Sherlock and Moriarty are secret lovers. And then the episode ends with, no, none of the theories are true. We're never going to tell you how he did it. Fuck you. And it's one of those things where to me, it almost felt like the writer was looking at all the fan theories and said, we can't write anything they haven't thought of, so we're just not going to do it.
Wait, with the
I don't know if that's true.
The roof scene?
Yeah.
Where he falls off the roof?
Mm-hmm.
They do explain how he did it.
Did they?
Yeah. Yeah, there's like a whole body switch thing.
Yeah, but it felt over the top ridiculous where it felt like it was a lie. It to me, it felt like a little cheeky wink to the audience of like,
you've been theorizing this whole time.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I don't know if that's true, but considering how much fan service they would put in and then yank out right away, it felt like they were so self-aware of the fans. So again, when fans interact with the writers, I'm conflicted. Sometimes I think it works and sometimes I think it goes a little too far. I haven't seen what you're talking about.
Yeah. I think it's mostly stuff related to like diversity and more representation issues.
Okay.
So I think it's more around that stuff, to be honest.
Then that I'm on board for.
Right. I think probably a lot of the stuff that you're talking about that you don't like, the big overarching magical larger than life stuff, definitely continues.
Well, that doesn't have to stop. Like,
yeah,
fuck the fans who complain about that. That includes me. Like, you got a vision for the show, go for it.
Right. It's your era. Yeah. So yeah, and I think to that effect, I mean, the point I was going with was that he did seemingly listen to some voices, you know, whether those were fans or like other writers, people on the show, whatever. And he made improvements. He didn't talk about doing it. He just did it, you know?
Okay.
And I think a lot of people just gloss over that. So there's that. Yeah. And I think overall, my kind of perspective on it is like, I think the large majority of his seasons 5 through 10 are good. Some are better than good and a few are excellent. And I think that's all you can ask for, basically.
Yeah, and I will say, like, for me, season 5 is a very enjoyable season. I do like it.
And like I was talking about before, like just extremely cohesive. And I love the like drop a little hint here, it comes to fruition there, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So if you're into that, guess what? You're gonna have a good fucking time with these seasons. And again, like it's done really well in season 5. It's done a little bit less well in season 6. And that pattern kind of repeats throughout Capaldi's era as well. So, you know, like there's pluses and minuses all around. For me, it's still fun enough that I think it's really well done still. And I don't think there's a lot of other people that could do it. No, I think taking over showrunning Doctor Who would be a fucking nightmare. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
like, oh my God. Yeah. I mean, especially like what we were talking about with the kind of the 3-season arc of like, you had them all listed out. I can't remember all their names. But basically like he drops all these names in like, I think it's literally in the 11th hour in the first episode with Matt Smith. You hear almost all of them. And you don't get to the full end of the mystery and figuring out who everybody is, who all the players are in this grand thing that's happening until the very end.
Yeah, and that's, for me as a viewer, too convoluted because
Okay.
I'm not.
I'm like, bring it on.
Hours. I'm not.
I'm like, bring it on. Send me down all the rabbit holes. Make me figure it out. I love it.
I don't want to think that hard.
Okay. I want to think hard, Kampy. I want to be like, yeah, I want to be hyper fixating on this shit. And that's what it does for me.
And I think, like, I'll be honest, drama, like TV shows that are drama based are not my thing.
There you go.
I'll watch them here and there, but I cannot commit to them ever. I like
love it.
comedy. I like lighthearted adventure. I want fluff.
Oh man. So really like this show was never for you in the first place.
Early seasons work.
Early seasons.
Yeah.
It's just more fluffy.
Yeah, they're
for
fluffier
sure.
and funner. And then as soon as it starts to get more serious and dramatic, I mean, again, same problem with Supernatural. At a certain point, I'm like, this feels like a soap opera. I hate it.
There are some soap opera elements for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm here for the drama. Like, let's be real. Yeah, that's my MO. So that's just where we're at. Okay, let's go on with some other points though. I think this is kind of, yeah, totally the opposite of what you were saying about character-wise. I think in this era, every major character is interesting, complex, has unique characteristics and motivations. They have real flaws. Mm-hmm. That's what I love about them the most. They're all extremely flawed. And that's what a lot of people don't like, is when characters act in a certain way that like clashes with what your morals are, I guess. And like to me, it's like I can totally separate that and be like, wow, what an interesting choice.
I think it makes it more interesting. And
exactly.
I actually agree with you on this point. Amy, Rory, River, all fantastic characters, incredibly interesting.
And you haven't even gotten to Olive Clara yet. She's the worst one.
Like,
and I say that affectionately.
It is fun to see characters, including make poor choices. Like characters you think are good and you think are morally upright, and they make a bad choice.
Exactly. I want to see you suck. I want to see you suck, and then I want to see how you're going to deal with it.
Yes.
Bruh.
Because again, it comes back to growth.
Yes.
Right? And character growth. I want to see the characters grow.
Exactly. Thank you very much for validating that. Yeah. And for me, this was... not to spoil too much, but I think this was one of the biggest failings of Chibnall era for me, 13 era, was I never felt like I had any real attachment to anybody. I never felt like they were that fleshed out. I never felt like anybody had like a dark side or things that they didn't, were like less than proud to display to other people. There's a character.
Who were was that Whitaker?
Yeah. Yeah, Jodie. Yeah. She has 4 major companions throughout her run.
I have a theory, and you can shoot me down.
Okay.
Like, have you heard of like messy queer?
Kind of.
Where like the idea is like there is more queer representation in TV, but not a lot of it's messy. Like queer characters are written to be good. Basically good,
sure.
Perfect.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. And Whitaker taking over as a woman in the role of the Doctor, to me reads as we want to portray her as good. We don't want to offend people by writing a messy.
She's the one who's complicated.
She is. Okay.
Yeah. No, I would still say she's still complex in ways that I didn't want to happen. Like it's not, I felt like it was rehashing stuff that we already did. I'm not going to go into it too much because that's just too far off.
Right. Yeah.
But with the companions specifically though, I was like, why should I care about you guys? Like, and I think RTD struck the perfect balance of that, of like having the normal people, but then also...
That's why I like Mickey. He's dumb.
Mickey, sure. Yeah, he's dumb. He's a little bit more one note for me, but like, let's take Donna. I think Donna's probably the easiest one. She is
probably one of the best written companions.
Yeah, and like great character, and I think she has flaws. Like,
she's incredibly flawed.
Yeah, and she has low self-esteem and like all this stuff, but like she's still a good person, and she's smart and resourceful and all this stuff.
Yeah.
To me, Chibnall era companions never really got to that point for me. I don't know. And like, I think part of it was also the sort of slingshot effect of coming from all the Moffat companions being like way up here in the stratosphere a bit.
A complete pivot.
Yeah. And it's funny. It's because makes me think of like, we're almost in this pattern now with New Who.
Well, every era of the Doctor, 9 and 10 excluded, they're their own thing. But I feel like every time we switch, it's a different show.
Why are 9 and 10 excluded?
Because it was Russell T in it. It still felt pretty consistent between the two iterations.
Oh, okay.
I see what
you're saying.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. Yeah,
It's like every time the Doctor regenerates, it's like a complete whiplash. It's a different show.
A little bit, yeah. And you need some of that for a show this long.
Yeah.
Because you need to switch it up. But we're getting off. We're getting off
Sorry,
topic
I'm
again.
sorry.
But anyway, no, I do want to make that point real quick, actually. So it's funny because we did like the RTD era where, again, that like grounded in reality thing then went way off into the stratosphere with Moffat and into the epic and crazy, which is, again, that's where I like to be. Kind of went back a little bit into that like more grounded thing with Jodie, but also I think it took itself way too seriously.
Ooh.
So it's like grounded, but also less funny.
Oh,
yeah,
no.
I know, dude. I know.
Yikes.
And now, where are we back at again? We're back at the Doctor is like this fun, crazy person.
It's Russell T, baby.
Oh, but wait. The companion's a mystery woman.
Yeah. Okay, so we get elements of both.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's like literally been so hilarious for me watching the new season and being like, dude, how long were you taking notes?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's funny.
I mean, some of it too, now that Disney's in the mix, some of it has to be like executives just being like, no, this worked.
Yeah. Well, and at some point we have to talk about the new season. And I do think it's doing some cool stuff so far.
Okay. I haven't watched any more than what we watched together.
Yeah. So it's all of the stuff that we were talking about with the tone. I realized, and like this is also informed by what other people are saying about the show, but I realized, you know what? Assume intentionality. Assume that things are happening for a reason and it's going somewhere. So, and I think like the more I watch, the more I'm convinced of that.
Okay.
So we can talk about it.
Yeah.
Further later.
But without Moffat at the helm, yes, I'm on board for that. When Moffat's at the helm, again, Sherlock was a mess of a show. There was a lot of stuff where it's like, that's intentional. And no, it's not.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Back to this era, the 2010s era, basically. I like that it's like very easily the timey-wimeyest era of the show.
I love it.
Like you got River.
Time travel stuff.
Bruh. And he's so good at it. He's so good at the paradoxes and the time travel stuff.
I do really enjoy that kind of, like, Moffat is great at timey-wimey.
Yeah. And like it's so interwoven through everything in this era. And like it's a show about time travel. If you're not doing timey-wimey shit, what are you doing?
You make a strong argument
Thank
there, babe.
you. Yeah, I love that shit. And I think this is going to what you were saying. I call it's like the most story era of the show. So it's what you're alluding to. And I wrote that like we're always referencing kind of these classic stories from fairy tales to Greek tragedy to like, I don't know, just like all of these. Yeah, like you said, it has that like epic, larger than life feel. Like we're literally telling a tall tale.
Yeah.
I love that like epic, timeless feel. And it's like the type of thing that you can rewatch over and over again because it has that like classic sort of, like it calls back to a lot of stuff that I think we grew up on and just like story elements that humans are, it's like in our DNA, you know?
Yeah.
I think he does that really well. This era has possibly the most iconic Doctor Who character of all time who isn't the Doctor, which is River Song.
Truly.
Yeah.
I'm not going to argue with you there.
You can't fight it.
I can't. River is an incredible character. She does have an incredible story arc.
Yeah. It's great. It's fucking great. And Alex Kingston has the best time. Like you can like whenever she's on screen, whenever she's doing her thing, you're just like, wow, that woman is having so much fun.
Yeah. And the payoff for it's so good too because she's introduced during Russell's era.
Yeah.
And it works. It works so well.
Yep. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like that for me, I think possibly that's an example of the drama that I like. Like I like this crazy fucking, basically epic love story, right? And there's many epic love stories throughout this era. That seems to be something that, again, that's like going back to like this classic story thing we're doing. And that's like catnip to me. You could...
Yeah, like to that point, Amy and Rory's love, like their whole love arc. I do like it.
Yep.
I like how messy it is. I like how insecure it can be sometimes.
Yeah. And kind
of devoted.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I was talking about last episode, you can definitely make the case for 12 and Clara as well.
You know, my one exception to Amy and Rory, though, is the whole, I can't have babies.
Yeah, no, that episode
We're getting
sucked.
a divorce.
Yeah, no, that was dumb.
I am only defined by my womanhood, and that means carrying children.
Yeah. I mean, you can have feelings about that, but it was just
absolutely.
like a poor plot device.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I love the season arcs being like epic and sweeping, which again, like what I said before, is like, I think that's the only way you should do a show like Doctor Who. Like, if it's not epic, what are you doing?
And I'm just like, eh.
If you have literal time travel and travel through space, and it's not epic, why? It's not over the top. Why? I want it to be over the top.
I mean, I just like a regular bloke getting into shenanigans.
Yeah, and like I like that a little bit, but I think it's so much more fun when it's like the epic storyline. I'm so into it.
This is why we're a good team, though.
True facts.
Because we're forcing each other to like step outside our perspectives. And
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it a lot.
Absolutely. And like, by the way, can't wait to hear what y'all think.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if you send us your essays, like,
Please.
please give it to us.
Like hearing other people's opinion.
Be nice.
Because it helps me process my own thoughts about stuff.
Yeah. Be nice.
Yeah.
No trolling, no hate comments. But you know, if you don't like something, tell us why nicely. If you do like something, tell us why. Particularly when it comes to Doctor Who stuff. But yeah. Okay. What else? Yeah, I mean, along with kind of like the epic storylines, I love that there's like these big overarching themes he comes back to time and time again. So actions and consequences, good versus evil, stories is probably the biggest one. I think if you had to pick an overarching theme for all of Doctor Who, I would say storytelling, because I think it's what makes us human.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the thing that we always go back to. And I mean, it's meta in that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, obviously we're telling a story, and again, like I said, like referencing all these like sort of classic tropes and this kind of thing.
I agree with you there. And that is a thought that I've had too while watching this, of like the one thing that absolutely connects all of humanity and separates us from the animals is our need for storytelling.
Yeah.
Which is weird. It's not a biological need, but it is a need within all humans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if that kind of thing gives you butterflies, gives you the warm fuzzies, this is the show for you. Yeah. And other themes are memories, grief, faith, and like lots of more. But yeah, it kind of all goes back to this overarching
Definitely a lot
theme.
of grief.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry. I'm not going to elaborate on that.
Yeah. That's, I mean, that popped in my head from a lot of 12 stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it kind of all goes back to this overarching humanity thing. Yeah.
And that's what sci-fi does so well. And that's where it excels, is really forcing us humans to confront what it means to be human.
Yeah, absolutely. Another point I have is I think it respects this era, I think respects and honors what came before it without overly referencing like previous stuff, but like still remembering things here and there. Like we'll get name drops every once in a while, like previous characters, previous companions, whatever.
Which I'm good with. I'm good with. If you're
I think
a
that's
different
great.
showrunner and a different set of actors, it should be its own thing.
Right. And again, I think that turned a lot of people off because they were just so attached to the previous cast, which is understandable, but like not a rational reason for you to hate something.
Absolutely not.
Like, please process your emotions, and don't do it on the internet. Yeah. So I think that's really well done. I think a lot of people disagree about that. A lot of people were really miffed about the Gallifrey thing.
Like, okay, are you referring to the 50th?
I am. And I don't want to talk about it too much if you don't remember fully.
Bits and pieces, and from what I do remember, I think I'm on the miffed about the Gallifrey thing too.
Interesting.
I liked it more when it was the thing in the corner and it just stayed in the corner.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of irony there is like it comes to the center for that episode and then it goes back to the corner for a long time.
Yeah, there are certain things where I'll probably talk about the mystery box. I don't know if I've already talked about it on this podcast.
I don't think so. Or on the podcast, maybe.
I'm not sure. But to me, I love a mystery box.
Same.
And I want it to stay a mystery box. And certain things like Gallifrey and what happened in the Time War, I want that to stay a mystery box. The Doctor's name, I want that to stay a mystery box.
Oh, that will be a mystery box forever.
That will be. I know. And I want it to be.
Yeah.
But there are certain things. And I think Gallifrey for me in the Time War was, I want that to be a mystery box.
I definitely hear you. I think, interestingly, where people got miffed about it was not that at all. It was like, you brought this thing back and it totally invalidates all of the character stuff that we did with 10 and 9. And
from what I vaguely remember, I can kind of see that.
You can see the argument, but like it falls apart pretty quick, I think. To me, it was like, okay, obviously it's the 50th anniversary, like we're going to try and do something big. But to me, it was like, it still respected that material because A, all that stuff still happened. Like we're not negating that. And B, it was like this opportunity to correct like the Doctor's biggest mistake. It's like, what if you had the chance to go back and fix your biggest regret in your entire life? And what if that regret resulted in the deaths of millions of people? Like, would you not try to fix it? So to me, it was like, it was feeding back into that hopeful humanity. Like, if we have the opportunity to make the right choice, we'll make the right choice. Or if we have the opportunity to go back and fix our mistakes, we can do that.
I can see it from both sides. I completely understand what you're saying, and I see the validity in that, and I agree with you on that. I also think, for me, part of what makes the Doctor such a fascinating character is this horrific thing that he was forced into doing, and it is a regret that he has to live with, and watching him deal with that and cope with that and still push himself on to try and be a good person. Yeah. To me is a very engaging piece of storytelling.
Absolutely. I think the thing was at that point is we had done that for 7 seasons.
Okay. Yeah. Fair argument.
So to me, it was like this epic turning point. Again, 50th. We've been doing this for 50 years. Like, let's go in a new direction. Like, let's take this character new places that, new places that
my butt's getting sore, so I'm like trying to. I'm like bisexual sitting right now.
Yeah. I thought it was like turning a new page rather than like retconning everything.
Okay.
And it was definitely not set up as like retconning to me. I think a lot of people felt that way. So, whatever, differences of opinion. I thought it was brilliantly executed. I loved it. And I thought and then also like it carried forward. Like we dealt with the consequences of that for the next 2 seasons at least.
All right.
So all through first 2 seasons of 12, he's dealing with that the whole time. So it's like if you would have done it and then just been like, bye, I would have seen your point. But
sure,
like it's like a thing.
Right. You build off of it.
Yeah. And it, then it creates more consequences and like more stuff happens. So yeah. To me, it's like that building effect, I think, is one of the things he does really well. Yeah. And like to your point about like the long plot, the long con that we're playing, right? And again, like that's my shit. I think like in that sense, like almost everything that happens, even if you don't like it or if you're like, it doesn't hit you at first, if you sit there and think for like 5 seconds, you can usually figure out a reason why something happened that like connects to everything else. You know what I mean? Like, and again, these are for the people like me who are like diving deep down rabbit holes.
Right. And it's the thing that I said about like coincidence versus purpose, right? Like sometimes I just want things to be a coincidence. Sometimes I want there to be no reason to it other than that's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want it all to connect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And I think then everything else I have is just straight up writing stuff, which we've already established. He's a good fucking writer.
He is a good writer.
Yeah. And I think like truly this is the stuff that clinches it for me. Like plot, cool, whatever. Characters, yes, very important. At the end of the day, the man writes banger stuff. In ways that really no one else has been able to touch.
If you removed all the like this whole storyline from Doctor Who and it was its own thing, people would be still ranting about it.
Wait, what do you mean?
Like you said, because it was Doctor Who, people took it personal.
Right.
Yeah. If this was its own standalone thing that didn't have anything to do with Doctor Who, but we had all the same story.
Yeah.
People would love it.
People, losing their minds.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of people still are. but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, yeah, he writes dialogue better than almost any other writer, certainly TV writer that I've ever seen.
It's hard to argue with that.
It's crazy. Banger after banger after banger. And like the crazy thing is, like, everyone who complains about him, I have not seen one fucking person complain about that.
Because you can't.
Because you can't deny it.
My biggest gripe with the dialogue would be if you're saying too many times, the doctor is a very serious man who's done very serious things.
Yeah.
But it's not a fault of the dialogue so much as it's overused.
Okay.
Still good dialogue.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I talked about before, the sort of cadence that he's able to write in a lot that feels like a distinct like style choice that basically nobody else can replicate.
Which isn't overused. It's only used to deliver certain impactful lines.
Right, exactly. And I don't think I imagine it's somewhat intentional. Like he's thinking about his sentence structure and stuff.
I think it would have to be.
Yeah. But I wonder.
So I want to make a point here and I want to make it stand out.
Right. Yeah. I wonder how much he's thinking about that in terms of like it almost having a poetry cadence to it sometimes. I've not heard him speak about his writing process very much, which I would be interested in. But what are you going to do? Yeah. And then there's like the fast, witty dialogue, the exchanges between people. I think we talked about maybe in a previous episode, maybe not. Maybe I was just telling you this, that one of the reasons that Jenna Coleman was hired was because that she could talk as fast as Matt Smith could. So they could do these insane, dialogue exchanges.
Good luck if you're English as a second language.
Yeah.
I mean, those subtitles. I still have to have subtitles on.
Yeah. So good. And yeah, like lots of great stingers, great one-liners, and then of course speeches. He's kind of the master of giving the doctor these like epics and some companions on occasion.
Yeah, and without it feeling forced or awkward.
No. And again, it goes back to that, like, we are telling a story thing. And I love that. Those things, like the one-liners, the witty dialogue, the speeches, they kind of, I feel like they became iconic to the show without people kind of even realizing it. And I would say 10 and maybe 9 to some extent have a little bit of that. I mean, the witty dialogue, definitely. Speeches less, but like a little bit. But I think, yeah, in Moffat's era is when that kind of really became central to the show.
Well, just to like call out how impactful some of these dialogue lines are. I even mentioned it in this episode that like the band Chameleon Circuit, they crib enough dialogue from Doctor Who in certain songs, and I'm pretty sure it's mostly Moffat.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. And these lines stand out to me not just because it's in Chameleon Circuit, but because they're good lines.
Yeah, hella good.
Yeah.
And then tragically, Jodie didn't really get any.
She's such a good actress.
I know, dude, it's so tragic.
What a fucking
She does
shame.
not have a single big epic speech.
That is not fair.
And I was waiting for it the whole fucking time.
Justice for Jodie.
Justice for Jodie. I know. And I think she's one of the ones who's like, yep, I'm done. I'm not coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. One of the lines I pulled, which I just had memorized, by the way. Because I've seen a lot of like fan edits and stuff. I think this is this finale of season 5 when 11 is talking to young Amy and he's saying like, I'll be a story in your head, but that's okay because we're all stories in the end.
We're all stories in the end.
Just
so
make it a good one.
Live well and love Rory.
Yeah. Bruh.
Off the dome.
Yeah. And it's like the type of stuff you remember. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's poignant and it's epic and it's beautiful. And it's like the type of thing that you don't see in television a lot. You don't see in any media a lot, to be honest, unless you're probably reading poetry, which not a lot of us are these days. So is this a plug to read more poetry? I don't know, maybe. I think for me, the stylistic thing that I love the most that he does, and I had not seen anyone else talk about it, so I wonder if this is a hot take.
Ooh,
I think it's so good, and it's like a literary thing that he does that no one else does, and he does it really fucking well, and it's so simple, you guys, but it's so fucking effective. He does this thing all the time where he repeats little words and phrases that sort of act as these little dialogue anchors in your brain. And every time it's repeated, and sometimes it's like repeated in a little bit of a different context, a little bit of a different way, but like it triggers you to recall the last time that word or phrase was said. And then you kind of, as you go on and it repeats more often, then you connect all the places and the times that was repeated. And you know what that is, Kampy? You know what that feels like?
That's poetry.
That's poetry. You know what else it feels like? It feels like fucking time travel.
Oh,
holy shit. Yeah, it's like
like it is poetry though, to like take like words
repetition.
or phrases and repeat them, but change the way that they're used and the meaning of them, and allow that to flow throughout.
Yeah, it's an actual literary technique.
It is,
and you don't really see that in TV writing, and it's like the most meta form meets function shit ever. And so like, I got some examples for you. Don't worry, y'all. Okay, most obvious one. Mm-hmm. What do you think the most obvious one is?
Doctor Who.
Okay. That's not where I was going, but good choice.
I mean,
what's the next one? What's the next most obvious one?
I don't know.
Really? You really don't know? It's River Song. It's a River Song thing.
Oh, spoilers.
Spoilers.
Yeah. I mean, come on. I say it all the time.
Yeah. And like, we're still doing it.
Yeah.
Like, I just watched an episode where 15 said spoilers. And it was like a very tongue-in-cheek way of doing it. But it's like, we're still doing that. Yeah. And it was, you know? And it's like just connecting that line all the way through. That's insane. Also, Hello, Sweetie, Impossible Girl, Run, You Clever Boy, and Remember, Time Can Be Rewritten, Bow Ties Are Cool. Like, he does it all the time. And it's one of those things where you don't notice him doing it until you notice him doing it. And then you're like, oh my God, it's everywhere.
Yeah. It works as like a connective tissue.
Exactly. And again, that's like that. To me, that adds to like the epic feeling and like the huge storytelling sort of point we're doing here. Yeah. And so so there's like a lot of overarching ones like that, but then there's a lot of instances also where he does it in an even smaller way. So in this episode, even when, for example, he does it a couple times, but the one I'm thinking of right now is when they say, we don't have the parts. And at the end, he brings it back and says, you don't have the parts.
Yep. Yeah. And the callback.
Yeah.
Right. And
a master of the callback.
It changes the meaning of what is being said, even though the words are the same.
It changes meaning. Yeah. My favorite one. Poetry. Yeah. My favorite one is in the 50th anniversary when 1110 and the War Doctor are trapped in a room together. Do you remember this at all?
They're in the barn, right?
Not yet. No, that's later. Okay. At this point, they're in a cell, basically.
Oh, and the sonic doesn't work on wood.
The sonic doesn't work on wood.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, he's gonna like send a message to himself, all this stuff, whatever. They're talking about the Time War, and yeah, I think the War Doctor asked something about like, do you remember how many children there were on Gallifrey that day? And 11 says no, and then 10 immediately rattles off the number, whatever it is, and he's like, how could you, 10 to 11, it's like, how could you possibly have forgotten that? And where could you possibly be now that you would have forgotten that? And 11 just says spoilers. And you're like, fuck. Yeah. And again, it's one of those moments that makes you reach back all the way in your memory to that first time. And like all the time since that River has said that, and that he's said that back to her, and all the stuff that's happened. And it was one word.
Yeah. And it communicates so much.
It's nuts.
That is.
Yeah. And that type of stuff is why you can get like truly insane fan edits and really cool like videos and stuff like that from this era, is because you can like make all these little connections that just
I do hope you post some of your favorite fan edits on the Tumblr.
I have some shit to show you. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so for me, like, it really comes down to that. It comes down to the dialogue and this like these little literary elements that fucking nobody really notices until you notice it, and then you're like, fuck. And then when you're trying to like piece out the rest of, like, for example, then when you transfer to Chibnall era and you're like, why is this not hitting the same way it's been hitting for the last 5 years? You're like, oh, that's why.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So that's basically my spiel. Yeah, we just have different tastes.
Ultimately, that is what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And yeah, for me, anything that's too high drama, or I'm sorry to say this because I wish I like telenovelas, but anything that is like a telenovela or a soap opera where it just goes on and on. And
I mean, that's
a
type of level that
and I'm not saying Doctor Who is, but I'm saying like anything that even has those elements, I lose interest in very quickly. And I wish it was different, but that's just how I prefer consuming media.
Yeah. Yeah, I get you.
Yeah.
I can't relate, but I hear it. And yeah, at the end of the day, we can all have our own opinion, and it's fine.
And be valid without having to do personal attacks.
Yep. Look at that. Look at us. We made it through. We did it. I'm just glad you figured this out for you, honestly, because I feel like it's something that...
It's like a weight off my shoulders. Years of agony.
It's just like, it's just been rattling around in your brain, I know.
And it is good to finally put it into writing in my notes and into words in this podcast, of finally being able to parse it out. And I do hope y'all engage with us in this, because it'll help me further parse out and process and give me new perspectives and new insights that I didn't have.
Yeah. And tell me why I'm right, you know? Just give me them reasons.
And I'm always open to being wrong. Hey everyone, editing Kampy here. That is where the episode ends. I know, it's sudden, it's dramatic, just like Amanda and I. Thank you all for listening so much. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. It was a lot of fun for Amanda and I to hash this out. So if you're up for it, join our conversation. Hit us up on Tumblr, email us at our Gmail. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic as well. And I guess that's all I need to say. We'll see you in the next episode. Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Show Off. If you enjoyed this one, go ahead and leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcast and give us your review of our episode pick for this week's pod. You can also email us at theshowoffpod@gmail.com. See you all next week.